And good day, everybody. We're at February 25th, 2025. Let's talk about some real estate activity that's happening out here in Santa Clarita Valley and talk a little bit of the history and then where the future is going to give us. Also, we have some buyer and seller tips for you. And properties in San Francisco, yeah, they actually less time on market than properties here in Santa Clarita Valley. I know we're quite a distance from them, but just to show you how the different markets here in Southern California, well, they're completely different from each other. So we have about a 55 day on market time frame to sell properties out here. That's a median average as far as you're looking at residential real estate, from single family residences to condominiums to townhomes. Current home prices as of January 2025, median home price here in Santa Clarita stands about $785,000. That makes a 4.3 increase from last year in 2024, and we're going to probably see that number with modest increases move to a higher level during this particular year. Right now, what's interesting is this area does remain a seller's market, with homes typically selling after 51 days on the market. That's a 37.9% increase in time compared to last year. And currently, the inventory levels, if you look at all the Santa Clarita Valley cities, so that's Acton, Agua Dulce, Castaic, Canyon Country, Newhall, Saugus, Stevenson Ranch, and Valencia. Boy, it just comes easy. Those particular properties, if you look, we have 545 homes for sale. That's a 3% increase from the previous month, indicating we see a slight easing in inventory constraints with more listings being added onto the market. And we will see that continue to increase as we get into more of the spring and then also, of course, the summertime. So these numbers are going to continue to get higher. We will also see the buyer drive increase. We do have a 3-month low as far as interest rates go. Now, if you're a buyer out there, very important for you to speak with your lender and find out, of course, what your interest rate's going to be, and that's dependent on many different factors. Make sure you find out from them what they're going to be charging you to get you a loan. That's something, when people go to lenders, that's usually something not talked about. You're going to know what your agent's going to charge you to represent you in purchasing or selling a residence. You should find out from your lender, hey, Jack, what's this costing me? How much are you going to charge me to get me a loan? Whether it's a condo or a townhome or a single family residence. Not that those should be different, but of course, when you're in a different price range, you probably have different fees because everything's based on percentages or points, as they like to use. That's an exchangeable term. Percentages, 1% would be 1 point, 2% would be 2 points, and so on. So it's something just to know going in so they don't, think that they can take advantage. I hate that. Back in the police days, every police station with the LAPD, they have a bulletin board. And on these bulletin boards, there are postings. And to be able to post on the bulletin board, you needed the CO or the commanding officer's approval. Typically, that was the actual divisional captain, the captain 1. So the first level, there's 3 captains on the police department, at least Los Angeles Police Department. So the first level's 1, 2 is more intermediate, 3 is the top level captain. But so you have the actual station captain, and they would sign it or initial the piece of paper, whatever kind of advertisement it was. And then thereby the person that was putting it could have somebody else put it on the bulletin board for all the cops to see. And typically those bulletin boards are outside of roll call. Point being, a lot of things on the bulletin boards were structured to kind of rip people off. They seemed a lot of police off. I do know that from my own experience trying to use one of the vendors that was on the bulletin board way before I was into real estate at all. But it was a sister of, brother of, wife of kind of a situation. And its wife, well, a law enforcement officer, that's why they were there in the first place. Of course, trying to make a dime, right? So they want to sell the cops. And the automotive world was really famous at ripping us off. There are some places that we can go and get a great deal on a car, but few and far between. Your car, it's very stressful. Buying a house is equally as stressful. It's just going to depend on how your agent's running interference. And in real estate, that different dynamic between a car salesman and a real estate agent, there's a big difference, because if I imagine myself as a car salesman, it's like an adversarial relationship between the buyer. Because who does that car salesman represent? Not you as a car buyer, but the dealership. So that's the same feeling you should get if you're going to be trying to use dual agency to purchase a resident, meaning you're going to be going to the seller's agent to represent you as well. That kind of adversarial relationship creeps up, and it feels like that. So in an automotive world, if you could take your own automotive agent with you, the one just to represent you, and if the dealer said, okay, we're going to pay your agent to bring you in to purchase a vehicle, oh my God, how awesome would that be? You wouldn't have to do anything. You just sit there and your agent would beat up the agent representing the car dealership, the salesman or person representing the dealership, and just beat them up and get whatever it is, the best possible deal for you. And then at the very end, it would say, well, Connor, what do you think? Does this sound good for you? We're able to get the car price down to blah, blah, do this, blah, blah, do that, blah, blah. And truly the buying, your representative, just like in real estate, I would know where that bottom line is because I would have gone all the way. And if we're unable to achieve the bottom line that my buyers want to pay, it's because the seller just won't. It has nothing to do with anything else. The sellers won't because they're either unable, unwilling, not motivated enough. Maybe they're not there as far as what they need to make to be able to make it work for them, for their future endeavors. And their decision, well, they're going to wait for maybe another buyer. Same thing in the car dealership realm. If you can't get to the number that you want, they'll just have to wait for another buyer. Now, you spend time there. That investment of time equates to money, and it seems like the longer you stay at a dealership, maybe the more advantage you can get, but there is a bottom line to everything. But wouldn't that be awesome? You have your own representative coming into the car dealership, and it's the same thing as real estate, folks. You want your own agent to represent you, and that's the best comparison I can make to purchasing a car to purchasing real estate. But the different in real estate, the different part of state is you actually have your own agent on your own side, and that's how it should be. And their costs should be up front, just like your lender's cost when purchasing residential real estate. That should also be up front. So top seller questions today we have, how can I make appealing to buyers? One of the things that people talk a lot about is home staging, but it depends on how your house looks on the inside. A lot of the properties I walk into, usually they have way too much clutter. They have too much stuff on the countertops, and they're usually not using, 3/4 of those appliances, covering these beautiful spaces in the kitchen. So that's usually the beginning. So when I walk through a property, I say, that sofa's awful big. Do you have another option? Do you have something maybe in storage? And if not, maybe we can get some smaller furniture to kind of open up the room a little bit. Some people just love their massive couches, and a lot of times that would detract from the floor space being represented, which is important. In addition, when I'm walking through a residence to prepare it for sale, we also talk about the original intention of the spaces. So if I'm walking and I see something that on paper should have been a bedroom, but now it's been converted over time to an office, where basically it's empty nesters where the kids have left and the sellers are in there, and they use that as an office, that should be something that's returned back to the original intended purpose, returning that back to a bedroom. It's really important when buyers come through. A lot of times, and I represent a lot of buyers, I have to point out that this particular room is actually a bedroom, even though the sellers have it put together as an office. That's important to note. Now, are there properties that have what could also be used as a bedroom, but primarily as an office as the original intended purpose? Absolutely. Usually those are without closets, but there are some properties that you will go out there and see with me that will actually have a room without a closet that they're calling a bedroom, which would an appraiser look at it that way, and the appraisal value probably wouldn't detract much from the property. If anything, are they in violation of something, calling it something that it's not? You could ask for clarification, but once you see it, that's when everything comes to fruition. My suggestion is when you're going through the property, let's say that is something you want to purchase and you're okay either way, the argument can be brought up and it can be discussed as to what the county is looking at the house as with regard to the number of rooms and why this particular room without a closet is considered a bedroom by the seller, but not maybe a bedroom by the recording agency or the county that holds the documents on the house, because ultimately that could affect maybe your resale, just like it might affect that seller's resale. But all of these things are very much property dependent, time dependent. If the market's a really fast-paced market, a lot of times buyers are giving up a lot of their rights in order to move forward and purchase real estate. So they're basically putting everything else aside. They're saying, you know what, I really don't care. I just want to buy this house because I've been looking for so long. I've written so many offers and I haven't been lucky so far. Haven't been able to move the ball forward to the touchdown zone. So I really want to get this done. I could care less if that was an office or a bedroom. Another thing that's important is people often ask when you're preparing your house for sale about home staging, as I mentioned before. Absolutely, there are many companies that function out here in Santa Clarita Valley. There's one that's actually better than others. I'm more than happy to refer them. They come to our office and talk to us about the staging process. They'll rent basically furniture to come in and outfit the residence, and they also have storage facilities and these sorts of things. These are beneficial in some cases, but that also depends on the agility and the movement of the market. If the market is moving very fast, usually there's not enough time for home staging, depending on what those buyers are looking for in the market, and also the competition factor. If you have other properties in your same neighborhood or in close proximity to your residence as a seller, it only makes sense to kind of be at that same level in their prices and the things that they've done to their houses. Now, let's say they've all remodeled their kitchen and you haven't. Does that mean you should go in and remodel your kitchen at $10,000 or $12,000 before you put your house on the market? Usually not, but it would depend on if for that $10,000 or $12,000 for a kitchen remodel, you'll be able to get more than that out of it, minus whatever inconvenience you're going to encounter, and however you're going to structure those payments, whether it's cash or whether it's putting something on a credit card. So all those numbers should be balanced out before you go out and start injecting a lot of money into your property, even though you might have a high competition factor. For the buyers out there, one of the biggest things that they should be asking is how that loan's going to be originated. And of course, just like I mentioned, the charges from the lender. That's important because the agent is also pointing out to them exactly what they're going to be charging, and if that commission can be gotten from the real estate seller, even though the agent's just representing the buyer in this case, in the scenario I'm talking about, it would be important for the buyer to know what those numbers are. And if the seller's going to take on that particular fee, which is historically very traditional in real estate, and even now, as we're closing out February of 2025, I am seeing that a lot of sellers out there are still very willing to compensate the buyer's agent. The interesting thing on some listings that I'm working with is the buyer's agents writing offers and requesting a lot more than might have been traditional in the amount of commission. Greed, maybe. Problem, yeah, absolutely, especially if there's multiple offers. A buyer's agent wants to be reasonable and rational. When they do write the offer on the property, the way they structure their commission or ask the seller to compensate them, if in fact that's where they're going to be getting it from, that's very important, especially in the seller's bottom line. Now, the way the commission's structured is typically the seller's agent is paying the agent they hired to represent them to sell the house, so whatever that money is. And then in some cases, well, every case I have with a seller, we have a discussion as to whether they're going to entertain paying a buyer's agent coming to the property. And usually that fee, depending, could mirror the fee that they're going to be paying the agent to represent them. Could be the same. It depends on the market. If the market's a little tough and buyers are more rare, then I see those fees increasing in certain circumstances. But again, having something's better than nothing. So that's something that agents should actually start to consider before going in and being overzealous and requesting a huge amount of commission from a real estate seller, really no matter what the price range is. They can make their decision. You as a real estate buyer can also make your decision, and the agents, well, they're going to have to fall back on their own account and hopefully use proper code and morals when they're approaching real estate for their buyers, because understanding the way that they construct offers, the compensation they ask for, that could be very dependent on whether the buyer does or does not get the residence. Also, those counters that a seller would send, if there's an overzealous buyer's agent wanting a lot more in way of commission, That counteroffer might never be sent because there's multiple offers, and they look at these other offers as being more reasonable, thereby just kind of bypassing the offer that was a little bit, well, too greedy. Actually, they just kind of that and moved aside and just countered the other offers that were more reasonable. Thereby, one of those buyers actually won the residence. As far as inspections go for you buyers out there, once you see a property at first glance, once you walk through it with your agent, you're going to have the smells. That's super important because you'll be able to smell things like maybe urine under the carpet. Yes, you're gonna. That's kind of issue. You know what types of pets and how long it has been since the floor coverings have been replaced. You'll be able to see any kind of damage, maybe wet spots or circles on the ceiling, indicating some kind of moisture intrusion over time. Maybe that had been remedied, but those sellers decided not to do anything about it, or they're being just completely transparent, maybe giving a paint allowance to be able to have that taken care of, but they have documentation as to what happened, when it happened, and how it was remedied and fixed. And then, of course, after you look at a property at first glance, and that's when you would really pay attention to the neighboring properties. You would see if anybody currently has any impact on the property you're interested in. Impact meaning maybe a broken fence that might be the property of both you and the neighbor, maybe a common wall, common fence. Maybe they have massive trees with huge root structures that might be coming under your fence or over onto your property. Again, problems, right? You want to watch out for that. Maybe you have a property that has a slope in the back and there's properties higher than yours. That might be something to be aware of as well. What's that look like? You know, is there any erosion? Maybe a lot of water runoff from a neighboring yard up at the top where their backyard is sloped away from the house, as it should be, but that slope continues down into your yard and other issues. Do you have any kind of water, a water trap that's on property? One of these massive concrete culverts that's basically at the end of a large slope, and we see this in Saugus, some of the other areas in Santa Clarita where basically water comes down and it feeds into basically a runoff. Runoff will actually clear that water off your property. Maintaining that and keeping that clear of debris is super important also, but you see all this going in. Once you do write the offer, if your offer gets accepted, you're going to have a certain amount of time to conduct a home inspection and my suggestion, I mean, you can get your uncle to do it. My suggestion to really be verifiable, you want a home inspector that's licensed, that's certified, and of course insured, just in case something goes wrong, but has all the proper credentials to be able to inspect your property. And just like real estate agents, there's better home inspectors and worse home inspectors. One of the suggestions would be do your due diligence on that. If your agent's going to be recommending a home inspector, my question to my agent would be, so tell me about this home inspector. Why do you like them? And in my case, I have one that's somewhat, I don't know, anal retentive. He looks at things besides the things that are deep and dug into the property that we won't see with our naked eye. He reports on everything. So the report, while it's long and lengthy, does cover all things. And some agents might say, oh my God, he's going to scare away the buyer. I explain to my buyer, it's better knowing everything, even the things Captain Obvious, this particular home inspector would point out. It's good to know everything about the property, so then you can, of course, take it to that next step if you're going to be asking the seller for some kind of credit or repairs or any of those things. It's important to know everything. Now, the things that are going to be Captain Obvious related, maybe there's a stain on the wall that's been remedied. Maybe that's something that's going to be an as-is, particularly a particular type condition, as long as it doesn't cause any issues, because when you walked in, you saw that particular condition at the time you looked at the residence when you made your offer. So when you're buying real estate, think of it this way. When you walk in, that first glance, when you're looking at everything, that's a good time to absorb everything. You're making an offer based on that. The stuff that's discovered later, that comes up to negotiation, potentially. Even if they're telling you, you're not to ask for new credits or these sorts of things, it still doesn't hurt to ask. If they are forcing that at the very beginning and asking you to sign that as part of your offer, talk to your agent, get their guidance, but ultimately you can still request it. And if it's something big like mold or like some kind of water intrusion, these issues that the seller probably didn't know about, the seller's going to have to get them fixed anyway if they want to sell it to anybody else, because now it's been discovered, it's part of the public record on the property, so every other buyer that comes along should be made aware of discovered during your home inspection, even if you don't want to stick around and monitor or purchase the property. Maybe you want to jump ship and move on to something else. Maybe you have a bad taste in your mouth because of what was discovered. All of those sorts of things. Let's talk a little bit about death on a property. We have 5 years to report it. There's other, I've heard somebody came into a house recently and said, I heard it was a year, 3 years. No, from the way it works, it's years. But if somebody died 6 years ago on the property and the seller knows it, why not? Even though it's only 5 years, you might as well just say, yeah, 10 years ago my dad croaked this property. He died peacefully at night, sleep. It's good that people know everything. Now, you as a seller, you have to make these decisions yourselves, but your agent should be able to guide you as to what the law is. That's in California. Maybe it's different elsewhere in the United States, but it's your choice. The thing that you don't want, and this happens, you don't want your buyer going out and standing at the fence line talking to the neighbor, and then the neighbor revealing something that you should have revealed, thinking that nobody would know, but all of a sudden your buyer knows it after they purchased the house and now they're the owner. There could be a problem there, a massive legal consequence, if it is that you didn't disclose that you should have disclosed. So when my sellers ask me, should we say this? I say the fact that you're asking me the question indicates yes. We should disclose everything, because at the end of the day, there's going to be some buyers that don't want to purchase a property that had somebody die in it, and there's other buyers that'll be happy to purchase a property even if they had some quadruple murder suicide inside of the property. They don't have an issue with it. So it's just going to depend on the buyer type, but there's buyers for every type of property. I will close in this way. Whenever you're looking at your real estate contracts, whenever you're looking as a seller at your listing agreement with your agent, make sure you go through it. Make sure your agent covers the highlights of it. But it's important to take your particular listing agreement and throw it into ChatGPT and have it chew on it and say, what do you think? And see what the system says. You're going to have the contract in PDF anyway. For you buyers out there, if you're having a buyer contract that your agent's giving you, which is the law out here in California as of January 1st of 2025, you might want to go ahead and take that and throw that into ChatGPT or whichever system you're using, Grok 3 or whatever system you're using. You want to throw that in there and say, hey, what do you think about this? Is there a better way for me to approach it? What would you suggest on countering it? Should I be happy with it? These sorts of things. Throw some good prompts in there, let AI figure it out, and then look at it, besides, of course, you reading it, because AI isn't the solve-all, end-all yet. Hopefully we'll get some notice before that happens. As it is, it's pretty smart. It's usually the smartest person in the room. Plug it in, see what it says. Same thing when your agent is constructing an offer for you. Why not? Take that PDF, throw it into one of the AI systems and say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think there's any way I can maybe be more, make it more advantageous for me as a buyer? And you want to establish your role with ChatGPT before just, or one of the AI systems, one of the bots, before you just, throw it in a document. But just a seller on this property located here. I hired this real estate agent. This is the contract that they sent me to represent them as real estate, as my real estate agent in it that I should be aware of. Do you see any issues with it? These are some of the terms that maybe they and I discussed. What do you think? And just let it spit out information with regard to having combed through the contract and looking at it. Of course, it's not a real estate agent, but I believe I have it check offers that are sent to me besides my transaction coordinator and myself. So I have like 3 levels of review there besides my sellers. For my buyers out there, when I get offers countered, I do the same thing because it's nice to have another set of eyes, even though they're digital, based on the process. I'm Connor with Honor. We will see you in the next one. Don't forget to check out Santa Clarita openhouses.com. I have a very robust blog there. You'll be able to see all the real estate listings. And of course, I do these daily updates. If you're watching this in the future and it's attached to a short, I do appreciate it. If you show us some love a little bit and hit subscribe and hit that little notification bell, that would be fantastic. I know that real estate just isn't everybody's thing to watch every day, like some of my fat loss videos. My God, those get incredible views. Real estate videos, not so much. But people that want to buy real estate or want to sell real estate find my videos. And I thank you all very much for the support and for you calling, and I will see you in the next one. Be well, everybody. Over and out.